Today we're going to talk about fractions and decimals and how to change between the two. First thing you need to remember is that a fraction is another way of writing a division problem. So 1 over 4 means 1 divided by 4. Any fraction can be expressed as a decimal by dividing the numerator by the denominator. So just to refresh your memory, the numerator is the number on top of the division bar and the denominator is the number on the bottom. So 1 over 4 means 1 divided by 4. And to set this up as a division problem, we can make a little X here to make sure that we're setting up our problem correctly with the divisor and the dividend. So now we're looking at how many times does 4 go into 1? Well, can 4 go in? So 4 cannot go into 1. So what we need to do is annex a 0. And what that means is we add a decimal point and then we add a 0, so we're making this number larger. Of course, as soon as we add a decimal point, we need to make sure we bring that straight up into our answer. And we have 4 goes into 10. How many times? 2. 4 times 2 is 8. And then we're left with 2. Does 4 go into 2? No. So we're going to annex another 0, bring that down, and now we have 4 into 20. 4 goes into 25 times. 4 times 5 is 20. And when we subtract, we're left with 0. So 1/4 equals 0.25. 0.25 is an example of a terminating decimal. It is terminating because the division ends or terminates. There's nothing that comes after the 5 here, so it stops. This is our answer, and nothing, it terminates at that point. So let's look at another example. Here we have 1/3, which we know is also can be written as a division problem, 1 divided by 3. And then if we want to set that up, we do the x like this, and we have 3 into 1. Now this problem is going to look a little different than the last one we did. We start off the same way by annexing a 0 here. Add the decimal point, and we brought that straight up into our answer. And we have 3 into 10 goes 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. And as you can see, we keep repeating and having to annex zeros. So what this tells us is this pattern is just going to repeat. We're still going to add zeros and bring them down, and it's going to continue to be 3 on the top. So what this tells us is that 1/3 equals 0.33333, and it's going to continue on and on and on. This is called a repeating decimal. It's repeating because the numbers are going on forever. They do not stop or terminate. To write a repeating decimal, we use bar notation. And bar notation is this little bar on top of the number, and the bar goes over the number or the sequence of numbers that repeats. So in this case, the 3 is the only thing that's repeating. So the bar goes over the 3. If we had a decimal that looked like this, then we would write that in bar notation like this, with the bar over the 3/9, because that, if you look here, is what is repeating. So any terminating decimal can be expressed as a fraction. Before we just went from a fraction to a decimal. Now we're going to talk about going from a decimal to a fraction. And this is really simple. It can be expressed as a fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, and so on. So let's look at this example here, 0.85. If we say that out loud, it is 85 hundredths. So we just write that as a fraction, 85 over 100. And from there, you can just simplify it to 17 over 20. Another example is when you have a whole number and a decimal. And this is the same thing. If you read it out loud, it's -4. Remember, the decimal point is end. 125 thousandths. So here we just wrote exactly what we said. -4 and, so we know that -4 is the whole number, 125 over 1,000, and then we simplify. So things to remember. Fraction is the same thing as writing a division problem. Every fraction can be written as a division problem and turned into a decimal. You need to know the difference between terminating and repeating decimals. Both terminating and repeating decimals are rational numbers. And the last one that we're going to add is that every terminating decimal can be expressed as a fraction. And that's what we just saw, that can be expressed as a fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, and so on. Okay, here are some problems to practice on your own. The first one asks you to express the decimal using bar notation. The second question is changing a fraction to a decimal. And the third question is going from a decimal to a fraction.